I'm sure that there were many things that stunned a lot of you who watched the State of the Union address. But Joe Biden suddenly coming out in favor of border security was one of the more jaw-dropping, nowhere near as much jaw-dropping as Buck not finishing out a bracket, but one of the more jaw-dropping revelations of the State of the Union. Listen to this.
If we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system. And as you might guess, I think we can do both. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all.
You know who doesn't support immigration reform? And by that, they always mean amnesty. The American people, by solid majority, whenever polled, they do not support amnesty for illegal immigrants, certainly not in advance of a truly secure border and a willingness to enforce the law in the interior of the U.S., not just at the border. That's one of the biggest places the Biden administration has broken down on this, and purposefully so. The non-enforcement in the U.S. interior, they are literally, as we all know, flying people to New York, Chicago, other places across the country from the U.S.-Mexico border. Illegal immigrants are being flown, taxpayers on the hook for this, all over the country. So every state effectively becomes a border state in that situation. They do not enforce in the U.S. interior. You had 1.6, 1.7 million known. They keep calling them encounters, Clay. That's a nice way of saying illegal crossings, because if you show up at the Tijuana-San Diego border with a passport saying, I want to come into America at the appropriate border station, that's not an encounter. They're not counting those. They're counting people that are coming into the country illegally. Biden speaking about securing the border is the arsonist claiming to be a firefighter. I mean, this is outrageous. This is absurd. His administration is openly, in the policies they pursue, open borders.
Well, this is, Buck, if you look at the data and trust the polling, basically the weakest point for all Democrats, which is why when I watched the State of the Union last night, I felt like Biden was making a calculated attempt to repudiate the left wing of his party. Now, I don't buy it. You don't buy it. I imagine most of our listeners do not. But when he came out and he said that he wanted to fund the police, not to defund the police, when he tried to argue that COVID isn't a partisan issue, even though, by the way, he's made it a total partisan issue, and this maybe surprised me the most, Buck, in addition to saying he was going to secure the border. You know what he didn't mention even one time? January 6th. He's back on Capitol Hill. What if the Democrats spent a year focusing on obsessively January 6th, the threat to our democracy? Biden himself has made many speeches about this. He didn't even mention it. Why was that? I think because the polling on January 6th is not good. Most regular people out there are like, yeah, you know what? It was a riot. We had an entire year of riots from 2020, the summer, all the way up through the election. And we wish riots didn't happen, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or an independent. But Democrats have wildly overplayed their hand in trying to argue this is an insurrection and that the country was actually threatened by what happened on that day.
That's true. And it's also true that Trump is not, we know this for sure, is not going to be on the ballot in the midterms.
Yes.
And if you're thinking about independents, if you're thinking about who is going to show up and vote, people can figure out that when you're the party in power, you have a majority in the House, you have a de facto majority in the Senate, you have the White House, President Biden. When you're trying to make it about someone who no longer holds elected office nor is running, it's pathetic. It's too obvious. So at least for the midterms, if Trump runs again, obviously you're going to see a lot of January 6th talk from the Democrats. But going into what are elections determining Congress, Senate, obviously also a lot of state level elections too, to focus on the insurrection and Trumpism is just effectively, for anyone who can see, who can read between the lines a little bit, is just an admission that the Democrats are not doing a good job and have no real plan or policy to speak of. It's just, what about Trump? What about Trump when he's not even running? Doesn't work so well.